The whole mission of my life is designing lives that impact the world, because I truly believe that as entrepreneurs we can affect the core fabric of society. I made more money than my dad that year in a 3 month and 1 week period. I made $65,000. Took half my dad's life savings and lost it in this business, and just made a lot of really poor choices in building the business, and eventually had to file bankruptcy. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make, is that they were cultivated in a certain way that made them successful, and then they rob their children of that. Energy is derived from clarity, because when you are clear in exactly what you're working towards, it's fun. It's impossible not to be excited and just amped up, baby. Let's go.
All right, welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast, and thanks so much for tuning in once again. Today is going to be full of energy. We've got on Chris Lee, so it's going to be an exciting episode.
Yeah, Chris Lee and I studied together last 2 years at Harvard Business School. He's one of the most energetic and positive guy that I know, and great to have you, Chris, on our podcast.
Excited to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
So, Chris, this podcast is all about success, the quest for success. And so we really need to start with a fundamental question, and that is, what does success mean to you?
So for me, success is a trajectory. What I've found over my career is that where am I pacing and what am I pacing towards? It's not a destination, and so for me, it's like, which direction am I facing? Am I always improving? And so for me, yeah, success is being the best version of myself physically, economically, with my associations and my spirituality, and yeah, and which typically is driven by just creation, right? So I am a big believer that joy and happiness is all comes from creating, and that the reason why we're that way is, I'm a believer in God, and I believe as God created the earth, he passed on to his sons and daughters the same desire to create, and that our greatest joy comes from creation. And so success is constantly being in value creation, and consistently working in an up, figuring out how to go to the next level.
That's awesome, Chris. So people don't know much about Chris Lee. How do you introduce yourself?
How do I introduce myself? I'm a father, a believer in Christ. I have 5 beautiful children, a wife of 19 years. And so those are the most important things to me. On top of that, I am an entrepreneur. I love building. I love creating. I've been in the home service and product space for 20 years. I'm at my core a hardcore salesperson. I love sales. I love getting people to see the world the way that I see it. And I think a true salesperson is helping somebody view the world from their vantage point. And so, um, you know, because of that, I've been able to go and build teams, and I love building culture and everything else. And I've had a lot of what people would term successes in life, little points that I could, check marks, selling a business that I started out of my garage for 180 million. That's cool. Uh, Having a successful family, very cool. I've been able to, you know, take care of my body and maintain a good relationship with God. Those are all for me, like the key things that, if I were to introduce myself, like those are what make me tick and get me excited. And I love sports, and the competition, the drive, the principles that are taught by sports. I've been a coach. I coached high school football for 7 years. I plan on getting back into it, and yeah, that's a little bit about me. And there's a lot of layers to this onion. I'm pretty dynamic person, a little bit in your face, sometimes a little too much. But I'm unapologetically me. So
Yeah, you're
I
authentic,
understand
authentic Chris Lee. Yeah,
authentic, positive, all the good and the bad. I got
that's
lots of
it.
strengths, lots of weaknesses, and I accept them all.
Yep, yep. I mean, we all have our unique goods and bads, right? Like, I mean, we all know you as Chris Lee, that you have that brand that you created, right? So it's all about positive to me. Yeah, yeah,
Appreciate that.
And you also missed off one thing I would say from there is you're also a podcaster as well, fellow
Yes, yeah,
podcaster.
I am.
I remember I think it was Jam and I were listening to your podcast in before we even started this, and I think it was a great inspiration for us to
absolutely.
kick this off, and yeah, really really grateful for that.
Yeah, very cool. So I would say more than a podcaster, I'm a continuous learner. I've sought after education and learning and growing and developing as much as possible. I've spent over $1 million on my personal education through different programs like masterminds and Harvard Business School, where I met your dad and uh, developed just incredible relationships. But I've always paid to be in the right room, and because of that, like because of my obsession with learning, I am a podcaster, and because it provides opportunities for me to learn from others, to ask questions, to just network and everything else. And I think at my core, I'm also a networker. I care about people. I love, love, love people. Um, you know, and so yeah, that's a lot of who I am.
So, Chris, what we found is through our conversations is people are very much shaped by their early years. So, I'd like to kind of go back to your early upbringing. Where did you grow up? Kind of what was your family situation like? And I suppose, how do you think that early part of your life has shaped who you've become now?
Yeah, for sure. So I've told this story many times. I love the way that I was raised. I grew up in a small town, 2,500 people. My dad was a school teacher. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. We didn't have much money, but we had everything that we needed. And there were six of us siblings, and then we also raised my cousin. So there was seven of us that were raised in that household. And I had an incredible childhood. My parents taught me how to work hard. We had rules in our house about having jobs and paying for things. Like by the age of 12, I had to provide for everything but underwear and food on the table. And so because of that, I learned from a very young age a work ethic. I had my first job when I was 9 years old. I started delivering newspapers 365 days a year. I had to wake up at 5:30 every single day, Christmas included. And later that turned over to waking up at 4:30 every day as I became the newspaper route manager, and I would deliver to my different carriers and stuff later in life. And so just doing things like that, I learned a lot about just discipline, provided for myself, self, just being driven and everything else. But it was a lot about just working hard, not necessarily working smart. And you know, I was very involved in sports. My dad was a football and wrestling coach at the local high school, and so that shaped a lot of my life. I spent a lot of my childhood on a sports field, learning and absorbing the different lessons that were taught by my dad, or just the experiences that people were going through. And so because of it, I participated in a lot of sports. I mean, it was like the only thing that we could afford to do. We didn't have a lot of money. Like I said, we lived very frugally. My like examples, I only went out to eat at a sit down restaurant 3 times growing up. It was on my 8th, 12th, and 16th birthday. And it was only me and my parents. The other kids didn't get to come because that would cost too much money. Um, but again, we had everything we needed, and there was a big focus on family, a big focus on God. My parents just were incredible teachers. The two things I knew from a young age was when I grew up, I wanted to be married, and I wanted to be wealthy. And I always knew that I was going to make a lot of money. I was good with numbers. I was pretty smart, and I was very driven. I had goals. I mean, these are two goals that I had when I was 6 years old, right? Like I was just somebody that was always dialed in, had things written up on my wall, and as disciplined as possible to be able to go and accomplish those. And I just had great examples of discipline. My dad invested, even though he was only making 60,000 a year, he was investing half of his paycheck every single month. And so, like I said, we were living off of like rice and beans and lentil soup, and so I just saw that a lot, but then I also saw how my parents put others first. They made a lot of sacrifices towards uh, donating to charitable work and being involved in sponsoring families that were in need. And so growing up, I never thought we were poor. I always felt like we were taking care of the poor. When I look back, it was like, man, we didn't have a whole lot, but my parents were always willing to give the shirt off their back, and that has shaped me tremendously in my life. And I had a lot of great experiences and terrible experiences with sports, like ups and downs, that really shaped me and the ability to like bounce back and from expectations and failures and everything else. And but yeah, just an incredible childhood that was focused, like I said, on God, on investing, on working hard. To the point where, like I said, I had a lot of things dialed in. At the age of 12, I had $2,000 saved up to be able to um, buy my wife a diamond ring one day, and that was when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Um, and again,
Okay.
like I said, I had two goals, man. I wanted to be married. Like I was a ladies' man from the beginning, and there
Looking
was
for that
something
wife.
that
Yeah.
yeah, so I had it locked in, and met my wife when I was 16 years old, and
Wow.
it never really looked back. We got married 5 years later after we met. Finished high school. I went on a mission for my church for 2 years, and then as soon as I got back, we were engaged in 3 weeks and married 2 months later. So, very like I said, I put goals on the board, and I make sure to obtain them, whether it's the right, or the way that I thought it was going to work out or not.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to jump on quickly and say a massive thank you for all of the support so far. But I also wanted to ask a favor of you guys. We want this podcast to reach as many people as possible so that we can share all of the incredible learnings that we've had so far. But in order for us to do that, we need to grow our following to beat the algorithms. But the good news is, however, there is one simple thing that you can do to help us reach that goal. So I ask you if you could please follow or subscribe to us on whatever channel you're listening to this on. It'll help us grow the channel, which means we can get on bigger and better guests for you guys. And with that, back to the episode.
So how did you meet your wife, if that's okay, if you're sharing with us?
Yeah. So we just met. My sophomore year, so 10th grade, when I was 16 years old and she was 15. She transferred schools. She lived in the same home, but she transferred to our small town. And the interesting thing, in a small town, not a lot of people would move in or out of that place. And so having a new girl come into school, it was like, man, fresh meat. And I had to beat the other guys off with a stick to make sure that she was mine. But yeah, I knew what I wanted from I mean, the very first time I saw her. But even then, made a lot of mistakes with that relationship during high school. I was young, dumb, and whatever. But eventually, things worked out, and we got married, and
But
here
she
we
was a
are.
keeper. Yeah,
She was the
definitely.
keeper. Yeah.
And Chris, do you ever like, now that you're in a position where you've achieved your goals, do you ever reflect back to your childhood and kind of look at it in a different light now? Because you know, you mentioned that you didn't feel like you were poor when you were growing up, but now that you've had material success, do you ever look back on that childhood with like a different lens?
I, for whatever reason, God gave me the ability to like regularly reflect, and like that's what I do a lot. I reflect on things, the way I was raised, lessons I've learned, and everything, and I've been able to pull a lot. So, not much has changed, but I mean, definitely the lens for sure. And I look back, I'm like, wow, like how did we do that? How were we able to pull that off? Like, how did my dad raise a family of seven kids and my wife or my mom on essentially 30,000 US dollars a year, and like that's pretty phenomenal, that he was able to pull that off. And then so yeah, I mean I look back, but again, like I don't think the lessons have changed much. I've always valued the way I was raised. Like there's a lot of people that were raised in a completely different way and they look at negative things or whatnot. Like, and I had life good, even though it was hard work and dedication and discipline and everything else. Like I wouldn't have it any other way.
And is that something you're trying to replicate with your children?
For sure. Yeah. So I've tried to teach them very similar principles. It's a little bit more difficult, because we have to be very intentional about it. But yeah, like I mean, we have some things that my kids know. Like one, they don't get dad's money when I die. Everything that I have is going to my church and charities. So the thing that I always tell them, I say, look, you don't get dad's money when I die, but what you do get is everything that I can teach you from here on out. And so, like we're very intentional about just teaching our children. My kids have been investors from an early age and learned how to work at an early age. Like at the age of 5, all my kids start selling things. Like example, July 4th here in the US is really big. There's fireworks, there's glow sticks and all kinds of stuff. Every year my kids, they go and I teach them about money and loans and inventory management. They go and they take out a loan from dad that they have to pay a 10% interest on. They go and they buy their inventory from the local dollar store. They take that inventory, they mark it up 5 times, and they sell that. I teach them about cost of goods sold. They understand their cost of goods sold is 20%. They go and they sell this product for $5 to people that they go and literally, uh, where they're at fireworks. I make them do all the work. I don't help them at all. They go and they talk to people and they overcome objections and they get them to commit to buying, and they sell a product, and then at the end of the night we reconcile against the loan that they owe me. And so that's something I've been doing with all my kids since they were 5, and it's taught them a lot. And because of that, they've they've seen what I've done with investing, and just I've been a very disciplined investor my whole life. And like I mean, I got my kids bought Bitcoin when it was $1,200 a Bitcoin, and they still have it.
Nice.
Uh, you know, so just different things, and they've been able to independently figure out things on their own. And I make them buy their own vehicles and pay for their own stuff. My daughter, who's 18, she turns 18 here next week. She's had her own job for the last couple of years. It's a full-time job that she coordinates with school. Yeah, like these are many of the same values that I learned growing up. I've tried to incorporate with my children, because yeah, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make, is that they were cultivated in a certain way that made them successful, and then they rob their children of that. And so
Mhm.
I've tried replicating that as much as possible. I'm not perfect at it by any means. I mean, there's a lot of things about my kids that I wish they learned a little bit differently, but I really, really, really try to focus on those things. I live in Washington State specifically for my kids, because it was where I grew up. Me and my wife have moved all around the country. In our 19 years of marriage, we moved 14 different times. And ultimately, with the goal to move back to Washington State, which we did 8 years ago. And when we moved back, I specifically wanted to buy a small farm so that my kids had a place to be able to learn how to work. And so we bought that place in 2016. We have 23 acres. And with it, I got 2.5 acres of walnuts and 9 acres of cherries. And my kids, they helped raise those trees, weeding them and mowing them, and just everything. Um, but yeah, all that has been by design. Again, I plan things real far out in advance, but to make sure that my kids, yeah, aren't spoiled little brats.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an amazing story. You know, when you're looking back, like when you're a kid, young Chris Lee, you had these two priorities: getting married and getting rich. What motivates to have those two things?
What
Anything that you
motivated me?
look?
I mean,
Yeah.
I saw what you could do with money. In fact, like what my parents did with their money was so amazing, right? Like they gave a lot. They invested in themselves. They gave a lot to their church. They gave a lot to people in need and everything else. And like I wanted to exponentially increase that. And so because I think one of the biggest life hacks is understanding the feeling that you get when you do charitable work, not just cut a check, but you actually do the work and like you're on the ground floor. And so for me, I wanted to spread my influence and impact as much as possible. And I knew money would exponentially allow me to do that. And I've always been a leader. I've always been somebody that has been outspoken and desires to be at the front of the pack to show other people the way. And so, being wealthy, like I said, is just always been a goal of mine to exponentially increase that. I've been obsessed with personal improvement and development for my whole life. And and really, I think when it comes down to it, like entrepreneurship is the closest way that we can be like God in creators, as I shared, and I strive to emulate him in as much as I possibly can.
Mm.
And in terms of that, working towards this financial success, how did you kind of go about doing that? Like, when was the first real taste of money?
Yeah, so when I was 18 years old, I saw a flyer. So up until that point, I just basically traded my time for money.
Mhm.
And I saw a little flyer. It said, make at least $13 an hour. And these little words, at least, really like stuck out to me. And I'm like, what is this at least stuff, right? Like everything else, it's always like, no, make $7 an hour, make eight
Yep.
dollars an hour. This was at least $13 an hour. And so come to find out, it was selling Cutco knives. And very quickly, as an 18-year-old boy, I was able to figure out that I could walk into any farm lady's house and walk out with $1,000 check, making a 25% commission selling these knives. And I went from making like $6 an hour to $250 an hour. And I was like, man, this is pretty cool. And so that's when I realized I had the gift to be able to influence and impact and sell. And so that was like my first real taste of like, wow, like this is cool, right? Like I can, it's about the amount of value I bring to the hour, not how much I make per hour. And and so from then on, I was involved in sales. I went door to door, was what a lot of my background. I was selling products. I used to do this program called summer sales. I'd go to college during the year and I would go knock doors for 100 days straight during the summer, selling different products. The first year I did that, I made more money than my dad that year in a 3 month and 1 week period. I made $65,000, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is cool. And then the next year I went and did it, and I made $105,000. I'm like, whoa, like this actually works. And at that point, I was planning on being a doctor, and I was going to school, but I dropped out of college, and I started my first business. And I started in '08 at the age of 24, and I thought I knew everything. I knew how I knew how to sell ice to an Eskimo. So I'm like, man, running a business can't be that hard. Um, 2.5 years later, just massive failure. I had raised money from both my dad and my father-in-law, um, and took half my dad's life savings and lost it in this business, and just made a lot of really poor choices in building the business, and eventually had to file bankruptcy. So I lost everything. And It was the end of 2010, early 2011. I had less than $1,000 in my bank account. Car was repoed out of my driveway. My third child was on its way, on her way, and um, yeah, I was just kind of living the entrepreneurial nightmare of why most people don't get into business, right? They
Yep.
fear they fear failure, and I had experienced that. But the cool thing was during that time, I what I realized was it wasn't as bad as I had imagined.
Mhm.
And because you took all these materialistic things from me, I still had my God, I still had my family, and I had everything that I had learned, right? Everything that I had developed up until that point was still with me. I had the know-how to be able to go and produce. I had the know-how to be able to go and bounce back. And so a lot of people were begging me to, like, hey, just go back to school, finish your degree, get a real job. And for me, I knew all the mistakes that I had made, because like I said, I'm a good reflector. I can reflect back and be like, oh, that's where I screwed up. My ego was too big. I had bad partners. I made poor decisions here. I priced myself incorrectly. I paid too much, whatever. um, did things to impress others rather than actually just build a real credible business. Um, so luckily, I chose to restart and build another business. Um, and that time I got together with my longtime business partner Daryl, and we launched a business, and we built it up. And over the next few years, I struggled to scale, but I built good, solid businesses. But we did everything, like literally anything and everything that you could think of. Flipped cars, houses, owned cattle, beehives, a coupon book, a medical pendant company, did search engine optimization, owned a home security business, like literally anything and everything to like make a buck. I did it. Flipped things online through eBay. I mean, whatever. Um, and I realized, man, there is still a lot I need to learn to be able to go and scale and build. So in 2012, I decided to go back and work for somebody else. And for the next 4.5 years, I call this my paid education time of my life. And for over 4.5 years, I worked for three different businesses. And it took a lot of like me swallowing my pride and just my ego to be able to say, okay, I'm no longer the CEO, right? Like I'm going to go work for somebody else. And that was hard for me. But it was that humbling fact was like one of the best things that could ever happen to me. And over the next 4.5 years, I was there with pen and paper, just studying these CEOs of these high growth businesses and seeing what they do. And over those 4.5 years, I experienced two different IPOs. Was a part of just incredible organizations. One of my favorite people to study was Todd Peterson. I didn't get a lot of one-on-one interaction with him, but I was in the room and I just studied the way that he built this incredible organization. Todd, many of you guys know, has has built multiple billion-dollar businesses and done them from scratch. And so just emulating and writing down the principles and how he ran business was where I got a lot of my education. And eventually, at the end of 2016, I was the vice president of this company, making $500,000 a year. Had what everyone would deem as a dream job. You know, unlimited credit card to go and do whatever. I had, it was just a really cool job that I had. I stepped away and people are just astonished, like, why would you ever step away? And what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. But I knew that I learned everything that I needed to learn, that I'd come to learn. And I was going to take my next step very strategically and very much on purpose by design. And so I spent the next 8 months figuring out what my next move was, doing studying, paying for courses, learning online marketing, learning a bunch of stuff, and then eventually launched the SoulGen out of my garage in November of 2017. October is when we incorporated. November we started marketing, and over the next 4.5 years, it was an absolute wild roller coaster. We rocket ship really, and we took everything that we had learned, applied it very much on purpose, made all the right moves, and we went 2018, we did 15 and a half, 16 million bucks. 2020 or 2019 we did 32 million, then 34 million, then 89 million, then 233 million dollars a year in revenue, all with like 23 to 24% net profits. And it was a wild 4.5 years, and we did, like I said, everything was on purpose. We weren't learning it for the first time. It was now just application stage and go and grow. And eventually we sold off to private equity. And you know, since then it's been another wild ride. Along the way, I consulted a company for equity. They sold for 9 figures as well. That I helped build their whole strategy, and I got a nice little payday from that. Been investing in a bunch of businesses. Now I run the educational side of my business. We invest and have a whole portfolio. But yeah, man, that's the story in a very high level, like
That's
how
amazing. I mean, yeah, we just keep hearing your story, and um, get amazed by what you've done over the years. When you were young, you had two wishes, right? But even you didn't wish for the third wish. I think you already have that granted. Having a great business partner,
yeah, for
right?
sure.
And knowing Daryl very well, and we talked about in our Harvard OPM group quite a lot in conversation, because you guys are totally different people, right? The way
For
that we
sure.
see, and in a way that we see, it complements really nicely together. The energy, the what you bring onto the table. So tell me, is that right way to kind of describe it? Like, what's your relationship like? Yes. Please take us through. I
Yeah,
just want
very
to, yeah,
yeah, so I've always referred to Daryl as my work wife.
yeah.
Basically,
I don't
uh
know whether he liked that.
no, no, it's we that he calls me his work wife too, so all
Okay,
good.
that's fine then.
Um but yeah, yeah, very much a yin and yang, different complements. We share in some different strengths, but for the most part, we really balance each other out. And I think, for me, I could go do something on my own, but that's never been enjoyable to me. Like for
Absolutely.
me, it's so much fun winning in a team atmosphere,
Together.
right? Yeah, and so like and the same thing for Daryl, right? Like he could go and do something else, but like we've always enjoyed and complimented each other. And frankly, like I've never seen a billionaire that's done it on their own, right? Like they have a great team. They have great yin and yang type of relationships. And one of my principles for success is that there's no such thing as perfect people, only perfect partnerships, perfect teams, and perfect organizations. And the only way that you get there is you have to balance out your weaknesses. And so that's Daryl and I very much do so. But we're also great friends, right? Like we've built a relationship. Daryl and I have worked together for 20 years, on and off. We've had what we call two different divorces over the time, where there was a point where we didn't speak to each other for a couple of years, which was pretty tough. And then eventually we swallowed our pride and came back together. But yeah, like when I came home and got married off my mission, I started working with Daryl almost immediately. And so again, like I said, we've gone through a lot. And but more importantly, we've overcome like our differences. And I think any successful partnership has to do that, because there's no just like perfect partnership from the beginning. You gotta figure out the things that work, the things that don't. But yeah, we've got a strong dedication that we want to do life together. You know, we want to do life with our wives, and we want to do life with our work wives, and that's where we're at. That like we don't ever see a day that we don't stop, that we stop working with each other. And so yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And I think that's where business is like becomes the most successful, is when you just really enjoy the people that you hang out with every day.
Yeah, and having fun together. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you mentioned a word there, which I want to touch on, your mission.
Yeah.
Tell us, like, what was it? Where did you go? And then also, like, I imagine being away for so long, there must have been so many learnings, like, about yourself, but also just like the world around you as well. If you could share some of those.
I've never been a big, huge worrier. But yeah, so I served a mission when I was 19 years old for 2 years. And as part of the mission, what we do is we go and we knock on doors and we share the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we do service, and we get to know people. And really, when you do something like that where you create value with no compensation, it really changes the way that you view value creation. And where you work out of the desire and love, versus like, hey, just stroke me a paycheck, right? um so I did that mission in Oklahoma. And part of being a missionary is there's no real communication back with home. You get two phone calls a year, once on Christmas and once on Mother's Day. And so I'm only writing like handwritten letters back home, and they write me hand letters back. Same thing with my now wife. Um, we couldn't even talk on the phone ever during my mission. Like as a missionary, you don't go on dates, you don't talk to girls. Right? It's just like you're dialed in. There's very strict rules, and you're very disciplined, and everything else. You have a companion that's stuck with you 24 hours a day, that just teaches you a lot about like getting along with somebody that you don't necessarily want to be, that you wouldn't choose to hang out with. And so man, just learned so much, learned a lot about myself and my character and the work ethic that I had. And I had a lot of success as a missionary. One of the things that we desire to do is we bring others unto Christ by baptizing them. And I was able to baptize a lot of people, and saw a lot of people's lives changed. And so for me, that was just like so foundational for just young Chris, because naturally I'm very egotistical. I'm very confident and think that I know a whole lot more than I actually do. And so whenever I'm put in a position to be humble and serve others and get outside of myself, it's a good thing for me. And so starting at a young age doing that, right, that really set a solid foundation for my life, and has made me like self-aware of my strengths and weaknesses throughout. And yeah, it's just really served me well.
Do you think that doing that missionary work help you to kind of get your sales interest, like because
100%.
yeah,
Yeah. So
because
I,
a
I,
lot of
al- I always tell
rejections, right?
people, yeah, I always tell people I've only ever sold products that I believe in and I use.
Hmm.
And that was Knives. I have a big stack of Cutco knives at the house. I
Yep.
sold the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I am very active and live that to this day. Sold pest control. I get that service on a monthly basis. I sold home security. I have an incredible secure home, and I sold solar, and I got solar out of my house. So yes, absolutely. Uh, Selling the gospel of Jesus Christ was very important. But I think a lot of people view that word selling as like a negative connotation,
Hmm.
but I think it's actually very positive. As I started out, like natural, like for me, sales is just helping the world see from your point of view and helping them see how your point of view will actually better their life and solve their pain. And so everything that I've ever sold, I truly believe has solved the pain for my customers and made their lives better because they've interacted with Chris Lee.
Mm-mm. I mean, I always see selling is like you're becoming an educator, right? So you're educating others. It's their choice to purchase or not, but at least you telling, hey, what can improve their life, having this, whether it's a product or service.
So what I would add to that, I would say marketing is the education.
Yep, yep,
Selling is actually closing and getting them to make a
sure.
decision whether they use it or not. So because a lot of people they present stuff, but then they get a maybe from somebody. And
Yep.
one thing that I've always been incredible at is helping someone get to a decision. And like, look, I'm not on your doorstep for you to say maybe I'll talk to you later about it or maybe I might do this. I'm like, look, I either want a yes or I want a no, and decisiveness is what is going to make both of our lives better, right? And so uh, the world is ran off of people that make decisions, and I would say most people struggle with making decisions or helping others make decisions. So yeah, for whatever reason, I've been blessed with the ability to get somebody to decide.
Being very reflective. Have you ever reflected on why that is? Like how, when you're in the moment, how do you convince someone to make a decision? Yes or no? Just how do you convince
Well,
them?
I think the reason I'm so good at getting people to decide is because I truly believe in whatever I'm doing. and and also I believe that if someone tells me no, that's fine. Like I have no fear of loss in a situation. Look, if you don't want to see the world from my viewpoint, I'm perfectly okay walking away. I don't want to lie to myself when you tell me maybe that person is going to come around and buy my product down the road. Like I I am a truth centered person, and I refuse to lie to myself in any situation. And when we accept a maybe, we are lying to ourselves that's actually going to help their situation or my situation. I believe that decision improves lives, right? And that could be for a no, but most people are scared of decision because they're scared of no.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. So, Chris, do you had any mentors that you look up to, or people that you look up to?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, as I shared with you earlier, Todd Peterson
Yep.
has been like one of the greatest influences in my life. He doesn't have a book that I'm aware of, or share a lot of stuff. He's got a couple podcasts out there. Casey Baugh, our
Hmm.
fellow Harvard alum guy, did an interview with Todd Peterson. I'd recommend anybody. So Case Studies is the
Yep.
podcast
Yep.
with Todd Peterson. Um, Absolutely love Todd. And then I just there's been a lot. I've derived a lot from books. So I just try to get in the room of many mentors, right? Like Harvard, I have a lot of friends that have taught me incredible things just being in that room. I'm an avid reader. I've read, I
Yep.
don't know, over 1,000 books, and can pull quotes out of all different types of people. One of my top books is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I absolutely love. I love some of the basics like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki.
Hmm.
I love David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. There's, I mean, I can give you a list 1,000 miles long, but
We can add
um,
that into our show list
Show
notes.
notes.
Yeah.
There's another point that I want to go to. You talk about Todd being such a big influence, and when we were originally discussing him, you said that you learnt kind of these key principles to scaling and doing business from Todd. Super high
yep.
level. Are there any like key ones that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I operate my businesses by 39 strategies. So over the years, I've compiled 39 strategies that I can run any business off of, and I'm actually writing a book on it right now, called 39 Strategies. And I mean, some of the there's so many different key ones. One of the core ones is that uh, most people have their priorities wrong in running a business. They put their customer first, then their employee, then their business, and it's actually the opposite that has to take place. Your business needs to be first, then your employees, then your customers. Because if I can assure that I always run a very profitable business where I have enough cash to be able to invest in the experience of my employees, where I can provide value for them, both long and short term, a roadmap where they're going to be able to grow and be successful. In turn, they will take care of my end user, which is the ultimate goal of providing an incredible customer experience. And so, like that's one of the core value or one of my core principles. But again, there's like 38 other ones, but
Mm-mm. Why
that's one of
39?
that it's just the number. It wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the number that I've created over the years. Like I keep an ongoing list and notes, and
Okay.
anytime there's a new core strategy or principle that I run a business off, I put in there and I
Yep.
think through it and I digest it. I'm like, is that the right one? Does this apply across the board? What else? What am I missing here? And so, yeah, I mean, that's 20 years of Chris Lee's experience, and reading books and attending Harvard and studying from mentors and everything
Yeah.
else. And um, as I've taught these 39 core strategies, uh, it's drastically impacted other people's lives. They're running more
Yeah.
profitable
Yeah.
businesses that allow them to be more impactful in society and design their lives better. And which really leads to like my ultimate mission. The whole mission of my life is designing lives that impact the world, because I truly believe that as entrepreneurs, we can affect the core fabric of society, like way better than a government, way better than anything else. And so that's my mission, is
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
that by designing the lives that impact the world.
Can't wait to read your book, Chris, when it's ready. But take us, what's next level pros?
Yeah.
We're
So
very keen to
next
know.
level pros. What's that?
Yeah,
What was the
we are very
question?
keen to know what's about next
Yeah.
level pros.
Yeah, so next level pros is all about, as I shared earlier, the definition of success. That no matter where you're at, it's all about trajectory. There's always a next level.
Yeah.
I don't care where you're at on the path, right? Whether you're 400 pounds or have $1 billion in your bank account or whatever else if your trajectory is up and you're striving to level up, plateau up to the next level. And so that's what Next Level Pros is all about. So that's the name of my podcast. Is the name of our community. We do education, where we have workshops and we have masterminds and weekly calls and everything else. So business owners that come in and they learn how to scale up their businesses and remove a lot of their own personal lids that are holding them back. And yeah, so that's my passion. I speak on stages all over the world, and that's all an appendage of Next Level. But yeah, it's really my life's mission, which shares the same mission of mine, which is designing lives that impact the world.
We spoke to Daryl a few episodes ago, and one of the big things that came up, and you've mentioned it as well, is culture.
Yeah.
And I asked Daryl, like, how do you view culture, and how do you build a strong culture? And I wanna see what your take on it is.
I mean, that's a very loaded question that we could spend the next 10 hours on.
Sure.
Um, So culture is my baby. Daryl is definitely part of it, but like I am a culture driver and do everything by design. Culture is the reason why businesses are successful. Strategy works short term, but long term, it's what culture is what holds everything together. Culture is having a mission and a vision for your business that's ran by core values, that is based on certain principles. I have a full culture guide, a 10-step exactly how you build an incredible culture that most people, they talk about it and they say, oh, good culture is great or whatnot. No, most people know how culture feels, right? They've experienced a good culture, they've experienced a bad culture, and it's just more of a feeling. But very few people know how to design it. And again, this is part of my 39 core strategies. There's, I think, 11 of those strategies involve involve culture. But yeah, I mean, there's no way I can go into everything here, but very much, like uh, an example of it is like a true leader has to be open to being wrong, being willing to be wrong, right? Like that's a uh, indicative of a great culture. Indicative of a great culture are when you hire, fire, and promote based off of your core values, and where the core values actually mean something, not just something that's up on a wall with a poster or whatnot, but you actually run your business based off of it. It's creating a vision that is very clear and identified, that promotes action, because people know exactly when I take a step in this direction, that it's the right way. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yes, I freaking love culture.
yeah. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
For
That's the saying.
breakfast, baby.
So the Chris, I need to ask this question, right? Because some people ask me this question. I have an answer, but I want to know your answer to this. How do you get this energy? Where this energy come from?
Energy is derived from clarity.
Hmm.
I what I always tell people is that there's no such thing as lazy people, only unclear people. And laziness or low energy is the opposite of what I have, which is high energy and clarity. When Because I've done a lot of work in my life of like knowing exactly what I want down to the minute detail, where most people are like, I want to be rich. I want a good life. I want a good relationship. Like, what does that freaking mean? Like what is the definition of rich to you? And why do you even want to be rich? Like, what are you gonna do with that money? Like, I'm very clear on who I am and what I want, right? Like, I am going to be running a charitable group that I deploy $1 million a month of my own money into rebuilding the fabric of society and doing that in a certain way. Like, so that's like a very specific goal that I have. I have a very specific goal of seeing God face to face in the flesh. I have, very, very specific goals around my relationship. Like, I desire a relationship that my wife is proud of, not just me. I have definitions of what that looks like to make her proud, to get her dialed in. And so, um, again, energy is derived from clarity, because when you are clear in exactly what you're working towards, it's fun. It's impossible not to be excited and just amped up, baby. Let's go.
That's it. That's it. I mean, it's funny, right? My version of energy, like, I've been asked the same question from my living group, for example, because I'm the first one to get up, last one to go to bed, like party like hard. And they, I mean, I'm not a young guy either, right? Like, so asking, hey, Cham, where do you get the energy? I say I get energy from the environment, people that I associate with.
For sure.
I get really hyped up when everyone's having fun, having a great time, and I want to be part of it. I want to be in the middle of that. And Dylan knows sometimes I can be very flat, right? And I can
Yeah.
sleep whole weekend doing nothing, right? Because it just environment sometimes, get me into that energy, like, it's funny that you put your energy come from a different perspective, it's awesome.
I mean,
And
there's absolutely a lot of things that contribute to the energy. I believe, like you said, the environment. When I'm putting focus on my physical being, when I'm doing all the right things, there's a lot, and that's why I say, like, in the P's, which is physical, economic, association, spirituality. I
Yeah.
think it's important that we put our physical body first because it's the way that we experience everything else in life, and so. I guarantee if I weighed 400 pounds that I wouldn't have the same type of energy that I have right now.
100%. And Chris, I suppose what's next for you? What's the next big thing that's going to bring you the energy?
Well, again, working on Next Level Pros. We have
Yeah.
we have several different portfolio businesses that I'm super excited. I'm passionate about sharing my message with 2 billion people, my very specific message of my 39 core strategies, which essentially change the fabric of society. And so, like, that is what pushes and motivates me every single day. Being a great father, uh, see my kids. My first one is going to be leaving the nest this year, which is just crazy to me. And just making sure that she conquers the world and that I support her in a positive way. The same thing for my other four little nestlings. That's really where, my whole life focus is. But I never see a time where I slow down. I don't believe that success is a destination; it's a trajectory. So no finish line will ever define me.
Mhm.
And looking back on your journey, do you feel successful?
Yeah, I do. I think I'm on the right trajectory.
One question. I know, for Dylan, like, I mean, main reason we started this podcast, we want to learn from others. So if you want to give one advice to Dylan, what would that be? I like to hear from you, Chris.
One piece of advice that would be, so you just want one piece of advice.
Or
I
one or
would
two, doesn't
say
matter. Yeah.
okay, this is the one that first came to me. Choose
Yeah.
pain now. There's no such thing as no pain, right? You're either going to get the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of discipline produces real fruit. The pain of regret, which comes later, has fake temporary fruit, right? When the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and I push the snooze button, I get the fake fruit of 10 minutes of sleep, or I sleep in till whatever else, and then I don't work out. And so what happens? I have the pain of regret when I am out of
Mm.
shape and whatever it else is. So, like, I'm the best piece of advice I give to anybody is figure out how you can choose that temporary pain now, because pain now in the moment is always temporary and always yields true fruit, which is what life is all about.
Amazing advice.
Yeah, that's some excellent advice. And look, I mean, we could talk for hours, but I know you're a very busy man and I want to respect that. And so throughout our conversation, I've been jotting down a few key traits which I think have led to your successful life. And I want to share them with you. And I think the first one for me is you mentioned it yourself. You're a continuous learner. You're investing time and money into education, courses. You're having all of these conversations with, exceptional people. You're going out and, you spent four years just going and learning from other people. And I think putting yourself in that kind of mindset of I am a learner and I want to take in as much information as possible. I think that's like something that definitely sets you apart and is a core trait that we're seeing amongst a lot of successful people. And then the second one is you have very clear priorities. And I think that goes to your point on clarity. You knew what you wanted from a very young age. And even now you're refining those things, but you're very clear on what you want. And that kind of ties into my next one of you're a go-getter as well. You know what you want and you don't just sit on that either. You go and you get after it. You put full energy in and go after and take what's yours. And I think a lot of people can talk the talk, but you walk the walk as well. And I think that's kind of set you apart, whether it's been in business or in life in general. And then the last one is reflection. You clearly spent a lot of time reflecting on your journey, the steps that you've taken, the decisions that you've made, and kind of where it's led you, and looked back on that journey and spent a lot of time with yourself as well. And I think in today's day and age, it's so easy to get caught up in other things, life, social media, and not actually have that time for yourself to just have a clear mind and reflect on the past. And it's only from reflecting from past mistakes and even just experiences that you can actually grow yourself. And so I think that's something for me that is definitely stands out for me.
And also to add to that list, you're kind of unique person. You have that amazing energy, which is contagious. Like we all love that. Continue to do what you're doing, Chris, and we love your work. And can you do a yo for us and get us pumped up?
Hey, yo, what's up, everybody? Let's go, baby. Right there.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Love that.
It's been an amazing conversation. And for those listening, if you've got anything out of this, please go and subscribe and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this on. And you can see all of our inspirational conversations over on our website, thequestforsuccesspodcast.com. And with that, we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Thank you, Chris. Love your work.